All right, looks like we are live with my man Scott Ritzema. I said your last name right? I should have asked you first.
Ritzema.
Ritzema, sorry.
Yeah, I answer to Ritzema, Ritzema, Ritzma, 2 syllables. It's actually 3 syllables, but whatever.
You probably heard of quite a few variations.
There's a few floating around these days.
So a lot of you guys may be watching, haven't don't know who Scott is. So he's going to have a chance to introduce himself to all of us. But we have a great opportunity to talk about a topic that is so important. You guys know in Diabetes 180, we talk about a lot of things about related to health of the body. But right now we're going to go into the health of the mind. As well as the body, because of course we're all connected. One thing I always say, Scott, is this mind, body, spirit connection is huge, and we love our kids. I mean, I've got 2 kids and a grandson, 2 daughters and a grandson. I love them. I know those who are watching. I'm sure you love your children too. I always like to ask a question as people come in. So for those who are watching, which if you don't mind, type in how many kids you have, and if you're a parent or grandparent. So it'll be nice to see, what the viewers, our viewing audience we have, what kind of audience we have. So I'm kind of curious, do we have parents, do we have grandparents, do we have any great-great-grandparents on watching? And how many kids you got? Brag on how many kids you got. What you'll see right here, right now is Scott's email. This is how you can contact him at the end of our live if you have further questions on our topic today. Okay, so Scott, since time is precious, why don't you start off by just telling us who you are? First off, how many kids do you have? Yeah.
Oh, we were blessed with 3. The third was a little bit of a straggler. We thought we were done with 2. And by the way, if folks watching are aspiring parents, put 0 in. But
That's
you
That's
want to learn a little bit about child development. Do you think we should kind of get prepared before that happens? Because then we're spinning our wheels. We're trying to figure it out, and that's where most of us end up, myself included. I am not a parenting expert. I do a lot of reading, I collect a lot of information, and I teach. That's just kind of who I am in a nutshell.
Awesome.
3 kids, ages 13, 10, and 6. We like to live in the country and go gardening and go hiking and do all kinds of things in the outdoors. We homeschool our kids, and I talk about media. To anybody who will hear it. Next week, I'm going to be doing a public school event. The whole school district is coming together, and parents and teachers and people who are all concerned about this question you're raising in this stream, and that is the media's effect on our kids. And frankly, really, it's on all of us, but they're in especially a vulnerable situation because they're in development yet. They're in critical windows of development. And when you target those windows with the right inputs, then they thrive and they develop according to the laws of development. And we give them advantages. If we do the wrong things at those times, then we can harm their future and certainly their present. But yeah, I do seminars. The big one, maybe some of your listeners have heard of Media on the Brain. Those who've heard of our ministry, Belt of Truth Ministries, are aware usually of Media on the Brain. We've been doing that for 12 years now.
Awesome.
400 plus locations that we've done live seminars at, and doing more digital now with this opportunity with you and others. So thank you for having me, and it's a delight to be with you.
Awesome, man. So it sounds like you definitely are the man to talk on this topic. Just before I ask our first question, a reminder for those who are coming in now and watching, just let us know or how many children you have, or like Scott said, if you're planning on having kids because you have none yet, and just want to get some information. We are hearing from Melody Baker, who has 3 adult children, and she says, "Praise the Lord, no grandchildren." I hear that.
Hi, Melody.
We have Catherine Nelson, who has she says she has 2 children, 4 grandchildren. God bless you. So she's a mom and a grandma. All right. Awesome, man. So I read recently a statistic on the Surgeon General's advisory that it's according to studies, 95% of teenagers are on social media. Which is pretty huge. Virtually all teenagers in America are on social media, and kids from 8 to 12, they say up to 40% on social media. So a lot of our teenagers and young people are using social media. Do you have any statistics though outside of that on how many hours the average teenager or child spends on social media?
Yeah, pre-COVID, it was already up to 9 hours per day for teens on entertainment and social media combined. So you add up video games, Hollywood entertainment, social media, all of that screen time, not homework, but
Yeah.
entertainment and social media oriented screen time was 9 hours per day. Already in
Yeah.
2016, there was this article in a mainstream media headline. A friend of mine sent it to me. Like, Scott, you're really going to get a kick out of this. And it said, kids today, speaking of teens, are not spending more time with screens than they were in the 80s. And I highlighted that portion and put it in one of our seminars on why we shouldn't trust the media, because that's a blatant false fallacy, a fabrication. I mean, you look at Jean Tweng's research out of San Diego State University going back decades. She studies generations. Her latest book, iGen, was about this generation and how much media is impacting them. And I looked at her research. It's 3.5 hours per day in the 80s, 3.5 hours in the 80s, 9 hours just before COVID. That's nearly a tripling in the amount of screen time that teenagers are doing. So that was absolutely false when that mainstream news outlet said they're doing the same amount of screen time as they were in the 80s. So one of the lessons we got to take as consumers of media ourselves is to be critically thinking and question everything. I put myself in that too. As a classroom teacher, I was always like, young people, you got to question everything you hear and measure it against reason, against your faith, against biblical principles. For those who are, I used to teach in a Christian school, and I would sometimes trick my students, and maybe I wouldn't do that today because I was, I'd lead them on with something to see if they're listening. But yeah, that's a principle we want to take for ourselves and our young people. We want them to become thinkers, not mere reflectors of other men's thoughts, because then you become prey to agendas, to corporate agendas, to political agendas, to worldviews that are being warped and manipulated. And so, when I hear data like that, I want to go to the source and I want to see, is that true?
So we live in a time you got to test everything you see on media.
Yeah.
So pre-COVID, we're looking at 9 hours. What about post-COVID?
It jumped significantly during COVID, and it got to the point now where 45% of teens say they're almost constantly on their device. So it's just where they live. It's
Worse.
their reality. I refer to it as a counterfeit reality.
Yeah, that's pretty huge. So it's a huge effect. I think every one of us who has kids, who are parents, knows this is something that our kids are growing up with. It's a part of their daily life now to be on social media many hours a day. So we have Joanne, who's here. She got twins. Thanks for being with us, Joanne. She also commented, they are 14 and we are very much struggling with social media. The children are stuck in the gender ideology fight right now because of it. Leanna Emery is a solo mom of 4. She has 3 boys, 1 girl, 14, 10, 9, and 7. Thanks for sharing, guys. So next question I have for you is an obvious one, but probably the one you're probably going to spend most time on. Does social media have a negative effect on our kids? How do we know, is there scientific evidence? How do we know it's actually affecting our kids in a negative way? And what's the studies or statistics behind that? Yeah.
There are hundreds of studies, published, well-researched studies. It's one of the most well-known facts today in the child development community that the inundation of screen time that took place, particularly with the digital revolution, the smartphone revolution about, 10, 15 years ago, when that came in like a flood, all age groups actually suffered a hit in their mental health. Even college students, high school students, all the way on down. And we've known since before that time that when little children are exposed to high stimulating types of cartoons and video games and these types of entertainments, that they get a hit to their attention span. Even when you're showing this to your babies and toddlers and they're playing on the iPad or they're watching even things like Baby Einstein that was supposed to make them smarter. Well, it's new images on the screen every 2 seconds, and it's acclimating their mind into an environment that is hyper stimulating. And then the rest of reality becomes boring by comparison, and so you end up with symptoms of ADHD. And the more screen time you're exposed to in those early ages, by the time you get to school age, higher risk for ADHD. Now, if you're watching nature-paced things like Mr. Rogers and so on, you don't see that kind of hit on their mental health. But by the time you get to social media and teens, we saw skyrocketing mental health issues. 60% rise in depression in just 6 years for teens. 50% rise in ADHD. And these things can't happen just because of genetic inheritance because it happens so quickly. And it's not just that like only ADHD people are, procreating and producing this vast jump, and it just can't be explained by genetic interpretations. It's environmental. And then you dig into the data. What is the environment that has changed and what is causing it? When you remove all this media, do you see benefits? Do you see a healing of the mind? Absolutely, you do. There's a practitioner who's done this in her psychiatry practice. Her name is Victoria Dunkley. She wrote the book Reset Your Child's Brain. And her program is a 3-week media fast for the children and adolescents who come in with anxiety disorders and depression and disruptive mood dysregulation disorders, ADHD, all of the problems that we're facing. And she puts them on a 3-week media fast. And all the data she has from that show that 80% of her patients have the majority of their symptoms gone in 3 weeks. And she's not even prescribing plenty of nature time and all the good things that we'll talk about, hopefully, that are replacing, all of the bad media with. She's not even requiring them to do anything good necessarily. It's just removing the harmful media, and you see that big of a rise in their mental health improvement. So, I mean, we could go on and on. The suicide rates for 10 to 14-year-olds went up threefold. 10 to 14-year-old girls, it went up threefold during this time of the inundation of social media. With college students, you take them off social media for 1 week in research, and you find that their depression scores drop 33%, their anxiety scores drop 33%, and their loneliness scores drop 36%. So you become much better off. And here we are on social media. I get it. It's a tool, but it's not for everybody. You got to gauge, how is this affecting me? And the best way to do that is take a week off and see how you feel.
Yeah. In just weeks, you can see a difference.
Yeah.
And I definitely had firsthand experience with this when I was college. Before I should say, while I was in my master's program, I was a sitter. And even before that too, as a CNA, before my master's program, I was a sitter in high school. And as a sitter in the hospital, you have a lot of people who are on suicide watch. And it was always amazing that, and I mean, this is going to sound like I'm lying, all right, but I promise you I'm telling the truth. Anytime there was a teenager that was on suicide watch, it was directly linked to this device. Mom and dad took this away. And they tried to either overdose, or they tried to cut themselves, or they tried to. So it was very interesting. I mean, I was only on a sitter for about 2 years, maybe about 3 years. So not everyone was a teenager that was on suicide watch, but the teenagers, it was very interesting. The teenagers very often that were on suicide watch, it had a lot of the times it had to do with, being cut off, being told they had to limit this. It was almost like they took away their addiction and they had withdrawals.
That was the word you took right out of my mouth, Lewis, is it's an addiction. And that is the surest sign of it, what you just described there. And I'm sure you deal with that in your work when you're dealing with people in our dietary choices. We get into addictive patterns with the high stimulating food that the big food industry puts out, and big tech does the same thing. These founders of social media, like Sean Parker, the first president of Facebook, he went on this apology tour and gave these speeches like 5 years ago where he was like, we knew what we were doing. Give them a little dopamine hit here. Give them a little dopamine hit there. I'm paraphrasing his quote. He says, we knew what we were doing consciously, and we did it anyway. It was like you could hear the regret in his voice. And then you get guys like Nicholas Kardaras, who wrote the book Glow Kids. And he states that he has treated hundreds of heroin addicts and also has now treated screen addicts, since that's become such a big phenomenon. And you know what he says about these two groups? He says it's easier to treat a heroin addict than a true screen addict. That's a direct quote, Nicholas Kardaras, Glow Kids.
Wow. So I'm going to take some time to read some of these comments that are coming in. And guys, if you have questions, comments, definitely pour in the chat. Let us know. Obviously, we're going to spend some time on the recommended solution, right? We're obviously painting a pretty dark picture here, but it's the reality, right? You have to be real. There's a problem. We can no longer close our eyes to it, but we're going to talk about the solutions in a bit here. Catherine says a lot of parents don't spend enough time with the children due to the pressure of the environment we live in. Yeah, that's true. Taking the parents being taken out of the home, it's almost like, screens become the babysitter. She also writes, we need God's wisdom to guide us. Every child is different and coming with their own purpose and destiny. Joanne writes, how do you address this with kids who do not have local friends they physically hang out with? That's an interesting question. We could address that. She also writes, my child has engaged in self-harm directly related to media exposure. That's Joanne. I can only imagine how difficult that is. And I know, just know this, you're not alone. There's a lot of people in the same boat as you. So let's give some hope to this situation. Is there steps that a parent can take to, I guess you have kids in different ages too. So maybe we'll have to speak on, I don't know how you want to break it up. Maybe people who are teenagers already addicted to media. And you also have kids who are not at that age where they may be addicted, but maybe I know I'm guilty of it, sitting in front of Coco Melon and they're quiet. So you might as well just, they're the young toddlers, how do we kind of address this situation? What are some practical solutions?
Yeah. Well, what you said a moment ago about, the teenagers and their addiction problems, I know that from experience. I was a media addict as a teenager. I played in a rock band, played bass guitar, watched every Hollywood movie I could get my hands on, played the video games that were popular back then in the 90s. But the research actually shocked me. I've always understood teenagehood to be kind of prime addiction zone, because you're getting those freedoms and you're getting exposure to more addictive media and even substances in many cases, but the prefrontal cortex isn't yet fully developed in order to regulate the choices. And so you end up in victim of addictions. But what they actually found was that when you give toddlers and preschoolers devices, and let's say you give them a regular toy, not a device, and then you take away the toy, sometimes that little kid is going to have a little bit of a tantrum, right? But those tantrums double when you make it an iPad, a video game, a screen instead of a toy. And they dig deeper into that and they go, the addiction pathways actually can be triggered at earlier ages in more pronounced ways than amongst the teenagers. So I kind of, in my assumptions, I had it backwards. I thought the teenagers are going to suffer more from the addictions, and the little kids are going to suffer more from the ADHD and the mental health dysregulations. And it was actually reversed. The harmful media is more pronounced to the teenagers in their mental health and with the little kids in their addiction. But I mean, it's still big for both. So the answer in the little kids' ages is really just screen-free early childhood. If we can, World Health Organization, and you might have some concerns about some other things that they say and do, but they were right about this. They said the less screen time before the age of 5, the better. Mm-hmm. Other psychologists say, if we can wait till age 12, and you don't need to be so, religiously fanatical or dogmatic about that. My kids at 8, 6 and 8 and 12, they're now 6 and 10 and 13, but about when they were 6 to 8, we would start watching things together that are my phrase that I like to use is nature paced. So a video that's not throwing new images at you constantly, it's not an interactive screen device. That's what Dunkley has found in her Reset Your Child's Brain. Interactive screen time, more hyperstimulating than passive viewing of a video, as long as that video is slow-paced. Nature-paced is a better term for it. You don't want to say, hey, kids, we're going to watch a slow-paced video together. But nature-paced programming is going to be best for their development. So just delaying screen time, and then when we do bring it in, make it communal. We're watching something together, make it true to life, and make it nature paced, and then it won't cause the harms that we're seeing. So that's kind of the early childhood break. You wanted to break it down.
Okay. Yeah. So that's nice. So there's different organizations have different recommendations, but they all agree on the fact that you should have no screen time from at least 0 to 5.
Well, the American Academy of Pediatrics is a little more wimpy on it. They say to age 2, no screen time except FaceTime with grandma, and that's important. I have my kids have grandmas, and if you took away FaceTime from grandma, you would have a revolution of grandmas on your hands. And no, it's not hyper stimulating to look at grandma's face there on the screen for a few minutes. But AAP, American Academy of Pediatrics, said till age 2, but I really think, at one point they kind of lost a lot of credibility because they just removed that recommendation completely. And they said, threw up their hands and they're like, screen time and time are synonymous in childhood today. And so we're going to rescind our recommendation for please no screen time before the age of 2. And there was an uproar amongst those concerned about child development. And so then they put the recommendation back in place. But so they're not following science, they were following culture. They were not leading, they were following. And so they kind of lost some credibility in a lot of people's minds. So we look to that 5 years or whatever. But the key is the stimulant effect. It's
Okay.
not like a 4-year-old watching a single shot of, a sermon is going to get ADHD from that.
Okay.
Or, some
It's a,
lecture. They're
it's
going
a
to get bored by it and go find a toy to play with, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
more than the exact age, I like to direct my audiences to think about the stimulant effect. How fast
Yeah.
paced is the
Yeah.
media?
How fast is the screen, which makes sense because it's really directly stimulating the dopamine more when it's fast changing screens, quick. Someone asked, what about adults? That's so true because we all have the same problem with that. We won't have time to talk about adults, but yeah, we have the same, we all, now me and you, we do social media, right? And what's popular? The shorts, right? Because people don't want to sit down. They can't even sit down and watch a 2-minute video. I mean, you make a video for 2 minutes and it's too long. You got to give a like 5-10 second short to,
Yeah.
so yeah. And we know because that hyperstimulation deadens that frontal lobe, right? And your attention span is decreased. So that's great advice. So for our toddlers, if if you are going to let them have screen time, nature paced. I like that. I never heard that term before. Nature paced, natural pace, something that's natural to life.
Yeah, and that's really one of the answers because people are looking for solutions.
Yeah.
Parents, nature, play, books, music, labor, service, grandparents, art, just kind of all the things that we used to know as childhood, right? I mean, if they just go back 20, 30, 40 years and think, what was childhood comprised of?
For
Maybe
me,
a
it was,
30-minute Mr. Rogers program, but the rest of the day, the
yeah,
five-year-old is
out in
at
the dirt.
mommy's skirt, out in the
Yeah,
yard, picking at bugs and leaves and whatever. I mean,
yeah,
it's not something I can prescribe.
yeah.
It's just we got to recapture what does it mean to be human
Yeah,
again.
I think maybe some of us just have to think about our own childhood. Like, what were you doing when you were a kid? I was out I was making mud cakes, mud pies. You could have so much fun with just dirt and sticks. But okay, let's move on to teenagers now, because I think a lot of us do have teenagers or grandkids who are teenagers. What are your recommendations for that? Difficult. Definitely remembering Joanne's question about those who are maybe isolated from their friends too.
You
Because
know,
I think
I
that's
I
hard
want
too.
to I want to challenge that perspective actually,
Okay.
because I think we make a critical error when we say, well, they're 14 now, the family unit is not as significant, and we kind of we send them off to more peer time as if that is the most essential. Now, the
Yeah.
research actually shows, and I know this is going to be a shocking thing. This is probably the most controversial or hard for people to compute thing that I've said so far.
Uh-huh.
Home education, children who are with their families a lot, and you look at the socialization of that group and compare it with public school educated kids, those who are with their peers of the same age group, most of the time, you actually have a higher degree of socialization. And I know that runs contrary to anecdotal evidence. Maybe we knew from the 80s because we all knew the strange homeschool kid down the road or whatever. But I'm thinking that actually had more to do with there were very few homeschoolers, and there were kind of the eccentric types of families that were getting into that on the cutting edge. And so the kid was a little different because the parents are a little different because they're just that more, radical type of family to
Yeah.
do something that was not mainstream. And so the research is what it is. When you meet kids today who spend a lot of time with their family and with their parents, they are able to interact with people of all ages in a superior way to those who are spending time interacting on screens, on antisocial media, and with their own immediate peers predominantly. And so, the idea that they have to be getting out there with fellow teenagers, and I got the keys to the car at 16, and me and my friends went out and got him in a bunch of trouble. And so, I think just kind of go counterculture and question some of our assumptions, and maybe we'll find a better way, a more biblical way for those of your audience who are looking to strive to be biblical in their lifestyle. But yeah, what you do find in this generation, I actually like these guys because they're doing less of that. They're not, promiscuity is down, drug use is down, murder among teens and violence among teens is down,
Yeah.
and alcohol consumption is down. And you might
Mhm.
be like, well, this is all good news then, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is, but the problem is they're taking all these mental health hits because they're replacing partying and being on, like I did when I was a teenager. They're replacing that with just constant screen time, and that's what's really causing them not to thrive in other areas. They're not getting jobs. They're kind of having arrested development. They're not taking on as many responsibilities as previous generations did. So doing that in the context of community, of family, not isolating with the family, because yeah, socialization is going to happen in a church or in community events. We just did it was called AYN, AYM, is Adventist Youth on a Mission. We just were this weekend with these young people, and of the leadership crew of 8 of them, I think I heard the majority of those don't even have social media. And these are 16, 17-year-olds, 18, 19-year-olds. And they're leading out, and they're coming from these type of home environments that were thriving. Now I realize not everybody's able to just homeschool their kids till they're 17. We've
Yeah.
got, single parent households and stuff. So we're all doing our best. Basically, we want to maximize the time that we can have quality time and
Mhm.
quantity of time together. The average teen today spends twice as much time on their smartphone as all conversation with their parents combined.
I
And the
agree.
average parent, if we look in the mirror, is spending twice as much time watching Netflix alone than
Versus.
all quality time with their children. So
Yeah.
we all need to reconnect and going to the biblical perspective. I appreciate you having the Christian ministry on. It talks about a prophecy in the Bible about hearts of the children and hearts of the fathers reuniting in the last days.
Wow, that's deep. I love it. And it's simple. It's simple. I often find that, and obviously we talk a lot about physical health, but I often find that the simplest solutions are usually the most powerful. Um, and you said it, it's more time with family. Like you would never think that. Well, I mean, that's all they need, but that could be as simple as this. Of course, now how to do that? Let's try about how to do that. Practical steps. Someone did ask a good question. How do you limit screen? And I thought about this too because my grandson does have disabilities. He's disabled, so it's hard. They usually say screen time helps calm them. Do you have any advice on that? Those who are maybe using screen time to calm someone with a disability, they have trouble regulating their emotions, and when they're watching something on the screen, they're calm. Yeah.
Dunkley's practice, a psychiatry practice that I mentioned earlier, does treat kids with disruptive mood dysregulation disorder,
Okay.
and by taking them off screen time, and those 3 weeks are not pleasant,
Yeah.
especially the first week
Yeah.
when you're coming off of an addiction. But she finds that a lot of resolution when you remove that the screens are the cause, not the solution to the disruptive moods.
Mm-hmm. And I definitely can speak to that too. Where we're in Portugal right now, and it's interesting too because the child development specialist, I forget her actual what they call him out there. They recommended that our toddler, our grandson, he was born with hydrocephalus, so he's delayed. That we severely limit the amount of screen time he has so that he could have more interaction with us, and it would help with his speech and development. And it makes sense. There might be, you would think, okay, well, it seems to be working because he's learning new words when he watches these new videos. He's calm, but how much more if we can replace that with real interaction? And you're right, it was hard. It was hard taking away that tablet and that phone. He threw a tantrum, but eventually it got better, and he forgot about it, so.
Yep. Yep. And
Yeah.
the research does show that removing even the educational media and replacing it with parents reading to their children, talking with their children, interacting with their children, that
Mhm.
improves language development, improves literacy later when they're in school age. And we don't need to be in a rush to teach them to read either. Children who are taught reading, who engage, who are given reading instruction at age 7, by the time they're age 9, they are caught up with the kids who were taught reading at age 5. And then after that, they exceed the literacy quality. So there's something to be said for delayed formal education, or maybe it's not delaying. Maybe we're rushing it and pushing it too far forward. And so what we call it is relatively delaying the introduction of formal education. But it's interesting, you get actually better academic outcomes when you don't urge that too early on the developing brain.
Right. Yeah. maybe pushing them too fast. So I'm going to read some of these questions. We got comments and questions. Let's see here. Yeah, so we have a comment from Craig and Angela. How do you limit screen time with children? Oh, I read that already. Sorry. TH has a great recommendation. Family game time, family activities, both in the home and out of the home. And I think that's great. How often do we get board games just play? And our kids love that. Family game time. I think that's a great practical solution. Bust out some board games, man. Uno, yeah, Uno games can get real exciting.
Or play outside.
Outside,
just have family fun time every day.
Yeah.
Every day, at least just 15 minutes. It goes a long ways. 15 minutes of family fun time every day. So, if our kids know they're loved unconditionally and we have fun together, that's like the majority of the battle on helping them to thrive. It's just being in an affirming, loving environment where our time is invested in them. They know they are valued, and we have laughs and fun together. And yes, we have discipline, we have rules, we have order. These are important concepts. But in the research, the most important single research practice of parents who are succeeding is that their children just feel loved unconditionally. They have secure attachment is the technical term for it.
All right. So before we close, and I want to ask you to give any final thoughts you have. Can you tell it? Because being realistic, a lot of us, we've messed up. We went with the flow of time and the flow of culture and society, and our kids are already addicted. We can't just we can't just, I guess we can just take away all the devices and say, that's it, you're done. Maybe that's a solution. I don't know. Maybe we're just going to, just go hard and just start setting strong parameters now on social media on our kids. And, they'll have to just adjust. But do you have any practical solutions on how you help a family who has a kid, a teenager who's already addicted, and making a practical change, making it smooth, adjusted?
I think probably the most important consideration is if we are reducing or eliminating screen time, what are we replacing it with?
Okay.
That is the most important thing. Because if you just take it away, yank it away from them, and you're just arbitrary ruler with a rod of iron, you're just angry, and that's not winsome, and it's not going to be helpful.
Yeah.
So before you do it, say, okay, here's my commitment. Here's what I'm going to sacrifice and spend less time on so I can spend more time investing in these children as a parent or as a grandparent. And maybe that's a financial sacrifice. Maybe it's hobbies, things that, are just not necessary at this stage. And this kid is in my charge. He's in my responsibility. By bringing that child into the world, I have a responsibility for their future well-being, and I take that seriously. And so I'm going to set aside this or this for the time being, and then make sure it's happy. And if you're going to do like cold turkey, I would not say this is the final verdict forevermore. I would roll it out as a test, as a fast, and say, I'm hearing some things on both sides of this, and I want to know. Don't you want to know? We're going to do this together, and we're going to see, and I'm going to make some changes in my media too as a parent. And so we're going to do a fast for 10 days or for 3 weeks. And we're going to eliminate this, and this. And, some of these absolutely necessary items, then we'll allow those at certain times with certain limitations, with certain rules about them. But we're going to just quit that for the time being and see if we can tell the difference in our joy and our mental energy and our relationships with each other in the family and outside of the family. We'll see if it affects us for the worse or for the better when we make these radical changes that the research seems to suggest we ought to make. No, I'm saying that very mildly, of course. The verdict is in, but you don't need to come down and drop the hammer in a way that is not going to win them. And so it's got to be a we're in this together thing, and you're replacing it with something better, and mostly yourself. That you are the answer to that child's struggles with media addiction, with mental health challenges. Your presence and your unconditional love is the best thing that can be offered to them.
I like it. I mean, first off, of course, we got to check ourselves as parents. I know this is not going to be easy for any of us to make a transition. We got to kind of do some inventory in our own life. But I do like that, the idea of doing it gracefully and finding positive replacements. I like the idea of just maybe, like you said, having a time frame where you say, okay, we're going to cut back on social media and have an end date for it, you know. Something, even another advice that could be really practical is just taking a Sabbath once a week. You unplug from your devices. You know, we have 70. No, we are 70 Adventists. You know, we have our Sabbath every Saturday. From Friday evening to Saturday evening is a day where we spend time with our family. We go out in nature. Some of us maybe need a day to do that. Every week is going to be our day to unplug and connect as a family. And I can guarantee the kids will love it, especially if you make sure that it's fun and you fill it with activities that they will enjoy. They might actually look forward to putting the phone away, for that time. And then you could probably increase from 1 day to 2 days, and love it. I love it. So before you give us your final words, we need to do this. This is awesome. We need to do this topic again. I did not expect it to be so informative. Very, very good. So Craig and Angela, let's see. I see your comment, and I'll make sure I don't miss anyone else. Yeah. So Craig and Angela says, how do you as a parent do appointments with kids when they have to behave? I'm not too sure if I understand that question. How do you as a parent do appointments with kids when they have to behave? We naturally give them a device, practical. Oh, I got you. Like when you want them to behave, you give them a device and they behave, using that to kind of get them, I guess, to calm down. And then Joanne said, we made the mistake of pushing school when they were too young. You're right. So
yeah, every single person goes, oh, I made mistakes. So don't beat yourself up on that. And it can be resolved. It can be recovered from. But when you have an appointment and the kids kind of got to take care of themselves for a bit, if you're pulling away from the screens for that, have other hands-on things for them. Little things that there's endless little trinkets that they can problem solving things or whatever. One of those. One of those things that you draw on and then you erase it by sliding it across. I'm revealing my 1980s, but they still have those around. I saw my kids doing one. What is that called? A magnet something?
The magnet, the magic or board, or maybe I don't know. Like
it's got the thing that looks like a pen, and you press down on the screen, and then it kind of you're drawing things, and then you can just erase it by sliding across the bottom with the slider. That thing is not the answer to all our problems. I spent an inordinate amount of time trying to explain that. But the bottom line is just real things, physical things, three-dimensional, non-virtual things. Yeah. And, kids have been loving that kind of stuff, or, playing with a dolly, or, the problem is they're in the addiction now. So those things don't have any interest, but just give it a couple of weeks. I mean, in the course of a childhood, in the course of the entirety of raising of your children, a few weeks of coming off of an addiction is going to be hard, but 2 years later, 3 years later, even 6 months later, you're going to look back and it's going to seem like the tiniest little blip on the radar.
I'm glad you said that, because you think about addiction. If they're really addicted, don't expect them to be like, oh, thank you for giving me this crayon and paper. This is such a great replacement for my media, right? So there's going to be a withdrawal period. They're going to be kicking and screaming. There's going to be crying. There's going to be frustration. You're going to be frustrated, but we have to expect that when we're doing a course correction for a child, but being consistent, and like you said, in the long run, it'll pay off. Any final words, man? We're going to have you back, Scott, for sure.
I just want all your listeners to be encouraged that you can do it. You can do the hard thing, that whatever in your head right now just came in over the last 38 minutes that you need to do. You can do it. I have countless testimonies, hundreds of them that I've received, and thousands more that I've never heard, that I hear through the grapevine, of people when they get into nature and they replace screen time with better things, it always leads to positive results. And so you won't regret it, and you can make it through the challenge in your own life. The thing you've got to give up that's going to be a struggle and a challenge, and developing that connection with those kids. I mean, there's nothing more important. It's the highest calling that a parent can be given. Don't take it lightly, and don't do it on your own. You've got a God who loves you and empowers you, and you can go in prayer, and you can know that that his everlasting arms support the God-fearing faithful mother. If you're coming from a secular perspective, I appeal to you to check out our ministry and see, maybe I'm not tapping into what is really the source of power to empower me. It's not some condemnation type of thing. It's a loving God who wants to come alongside you and knows your struggles. The Bible says that in our affliction, God is afflicted. So he empathizes with our needs. God is love. And so just that's kind of my closing words as you know, teacher and preacher, and just wanting to help. And please reach out to me if there's anything I can do to offer additional counsel, answer questions that I didn't answer. If you want to check out our materials, we have whole teaching seminars on this topic, because this is only just a little introduction, really. At beltoftruth.tv, we have all those seminars up there. Media on the Brain, the Media Mind. That's probably going to be the most helpful one for parents on the media topic. It's called the Media Mind: Reclaiming the Human Soul in the Digital Dark Age. So we're going to do some reclaiming here. There's a parenting seminar up there as well on beltoftruth.tv, and some stuff on true education as well. So yeah, that beltoftruth.tv, you'll get more than you bargained for. A lot of info there, inspiring stuff.
Yes, absolutely. It's going to help a lot. So guys, you got the email right there. Belt of Truth. Is it .tv?
Yeah, beltoftruth.tv is where all our seminars are.
Okay. Yep. But your email, Scott, you know, I'm sure he'll love to help. Some last remarks. Nash Collins says, love everything you guys are doing today to make family get out and leave phone and television alone. God bless you, both my friends and my wife, and Angelica and family says, amen. Love it. Joanne says, I would love more info because I really need help. So yeah, Joanne, you got the information there. I hope you can reach out and get the help you need. And Angela says, very informative, great tips. Thank you. Thank you guys for watching. As some final words as well, just want to remind anyone who has not already joined. Oops, I think I showed the wrong comment here. Now I'm really messing up here.
It's all right. You want me to cover the floor for you for a second?
There it is. Yeah, I'm trying to show the right comment there. Diabetes 180 is a name of our Facebook group for anyone who is not familiar with it. And in that group, we do a lot of challenges. So in 2 weeks, and Scott, you're welcome to join us. We're going to do an exercise challenge. So so if you guys are ready to take advantage of this warmer weather and get out there and meet your health goals, we're going to do an exercise challenge starting 2 Mondays from this Monday. The challenge is going to last 5 days, and there will be some awesome prizes. But you got to be in the group. So Diabetes 180, Diabetes 180, if you're interested in joining that, and many challenges and information that we provide on that private Facebook group. So look forward to seeing you guys there. All right, Scott, man, we're going to meet up again for sure, man. You guys have a wonderful night, and thanks for joining.